Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The clock on the wall flicked to 6:30 p.m., and the bustling diner was already full. The dinner rush had started, and the small space was filled with the sound of clinking dishes, chatter, and the rich scent of greasy fries and fresh coffee. Samantha didn't mind the chaos, it was just part of the job. At 24, she had already worked 3 years as a waitress at this small, family-run diner. She knew the regulars, the routine, and every corner of the place. This was her world, her escape from the outside pressures of life. Her fingers moved quickly as she wiped down a table. She didn't have time to think about anything beyond the next order. A large group had just arrived, and she had to make sure every drink was filled and the fries were fresh. Her sneakers squeaked on the floor as she moved, balancing the trays with ease. But tonight was different. Samantha had a feeling that something was off in the air. It wasn't the typical Friday night vibe. It wasn't the strange silence that sometimes fell after the chaos of the dinner crowd died down, or the way the lights flickered slightly. No, it was something else, something more subtle. It was like there was an invisible weight hanging over her, pressing against her chest. She ignored the feeling, though. There were orders to be taken, food to be served, and customers to be appeased. "Hey, Sam, could you get the coffee refill for table 12? Her manager, Mike, called out from behind the counter. His voice was tired but steady. He'd been managing the diner for years, and he was used to the hectic pace of the evenings. Samantha just nodded, flashing him a quick smile before turning to grab the coffee pot. As she walked past the row of booths along the wall, she noticed a man sitting alone in the corner, a figure she hadn't seen before. He was tall, with broad shoulders, his posture impeccable as he sat back in the seat, a black suit neatly pressed, and his black tie just slightly undone. His face was sharp, chiseled, like a model who had walked off the pages of a magazine. His hair was dark, gelled back slightly, and his eyes were what caught her attention. They were deep, piercing, and completely focused on her. They followed her every move, never straying from her as she walked by. A chill ran up her spine, but she quickly dismissed it. People stared all the time. A waitress was used to being looked at. She was used to it, even if it made her uncomfortable. She continued to the table, refilled the coffee for the elderly man who sat there, smiled at him, and moved back down the row of tables. The man in the corner didn't blink, his eyes still trained on her as if she were the only person in the room. She pretended not to notice, but his stare felt like a physical touch on her skin. She moved to the kitchen to grab the next order. Mike was there, counting out bills from the register. "You good, Sam?" he asked, his voice casual, but his eyes narrowed slightly as he glanced at her. Samantha only nodded in response, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When she returned to the dining area, the man in the corner was still sitting there. The place was busier now, the crowd louder. She should have been relieved. But instead, her heart skipped a beat when she saw that he had shifted slightly in his seat, leaning just a little toward her, his eyes still locked on her with an intensity she couldn't explain. He hadn't ordered anything since he'd walked in over an hour ago. That wasn't unusual for some people, they just wanted a cup of coffee or a water refill, but most of them would leave after a while. This man, however, didn't seem to be going anywhere. It was unsettling, but Samantha forced herself to focus. She couldn't let herself get distracted by the strange feeling gnawing at her. But it wasn't just his stare anymore. He was making subtle movements, never looking at anyone else, always just observing her, waiting for something. A strange tension built up in the pit of her stomach, a knot that tightened with each passing moment. She didn't know why, but her instincts screamed at her to stay alert. At one point, she was balancing a tray full of food, weaving her way through the tables when she felt his gaze on her again. It was like a weight, pulling her attention back to him. She tried to push it aside, tried to focus on the task at hand, but something about the way he was staring made her skin crawl. "Everything okay?" a customer asked, breaking her out of her trance. Samantha blinked and turned toward the voice. It was a woman, mid-40s, sitting with her husband in the booth near the window. "Oh, yes. Just a busy night," Samantha replied with a smile, brushing off the strange sensation. But she couldn't shake it. The unease, the feeling that the man in the corner knew something she didn't. He hadn't moved an inch since she had first noticed him. His eyes didn't waver from her as she went about her tasks. And yet, he didn't even seem to be making any effort to order. Most customers who sat for too long at the diner would eventually ask for something, but not him. As the night wore on, the tension in the air only seemed to grow. The crowd slowly started to thin out, but the man in the corner remained. Samantha's shift was almost over. She had one more table to clear, and then she could go home. She started collecting the dirty plates from the last booth when she noticed the man standing up. It wasn't sudden. There was no loud movement. He rose from the table slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. Samantha could feel his presence drawing closer, and she glanced up as he approached her, the sound of his polished shoes on the floor echoing in her mind. "Excuse me," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "Could you come here for a moment?" She stopped in her tracks, her heart beating faster. She forced herself to smile, keeping her expression neutral. "Sure, can I help you with something?" she asked, though a small part of her wanted to back away, to run. "I've been watching you," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "I think you're someone special." Samantha's stomach dropped. Something about the way he said it made her feel vulnerable, exposed, as if he knew more about her than she was comfortable with. But before she could respond, he gave a small smile and slipped a business card into her hand. "Don't worry," he said, turning to leave. "I'll be seeing you again." And just like that, he was gone. The door swung shut behind him with a soft jingle, and Samantha was left standing there, frozen in place. The card in her hand felt like it weighed a ton. She glanced at it, her fingers trembling as she read the name, Adrian Hale, CEO of Hale Enterprises. Beneath the name was a phone number, and underneath that, just a single phrase, "Your life is about to change." The words burned into her brain as she stared at the card, unsure of what to make of it. Who was this man? Why had he been watching her? And why had he left this cryptic message? As Samantha stared at the card, a strange mixture of fear and curiosity swirled inside her. Little did she know, this was just the beginning. The mystery that Adrian Hale had set into motion was far deeper and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. And her life, her very survival, was about to be forever altered. Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that the man's words meant something more. What did he know about her? And why was her life about to change? Samantha couldn't sleep that night. She had tossed and turned in her small apartment, her mind racing, the business card pressed into her hand like an unwanted reminder. Adrian Hale. The name echoed in her thoughts, growing louder with each passing minute. Who was he? Why had he singled her out? What did he mean by, "Your life is about to change"? The card sat on her nightstand, taunting her. Its simple black lettering seemed to mock her, like a puzzle she couldn't solve. She had tried to ignore it, but the events of the evening kept replaying in her mind. The way his eyes had followed her, the unnerving calmness in his voice, and those last words, "I'll be seeing you again." It wasn't the first time Samantha had felt uneasy around a customer. In her line of work, she encountered all sorts of people. There were the regulars, the ones who came in every day for their coffee and never spoke more than a few words. There were the busy businesspeople, glued to their laptops while they sipped overpriced lattes. And then there were the odd ones, the ones who watched a little too closely, made comments that didn't quite sit right, or lingered too long in the corner booth. But Adrian Hale, he was different. The next morning, she sat at her kitchen table, staring at the card again. It was now bright daylight, the sun casting warm light across her small apartment, but the unease from last night still clung to her. She couldn't shake the thought of him. He wasn't like the others. There was something about him, something dangerous. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over the number written on the card. It was tempting. So tempting. What could it hurt, right? It wasn't like he was a criminal or anything, at least, not that she knew. Maybe he was just a wealthy businessman with too much time on his hands. But there was something nagging at the back of her mind, something that screamed to be careful, to walk away, to forget all about this encounter and go on with her life. But she couldn't forget. And so, against her better judgment, she dialed the number. It rang twice before a deep voice answered. Adrian Hale. Mr. Hale? Samantha stammered, instantly regretting her decision. This is Samantha, the waitress from last night. There was a brief silence on the other end, and then he spoke again, his voice smooth and collected. Samantha. I've been expecting your call. Her heart skipped a beat. You've been expecting me? Of course. I'm a man of many connections, Samantha. I'm always watching, always looking for opportunities. Samantha felt a cold chill crawl up her spine. Opportunities, she repeated, trying to sound casual, even though her mind was racing. What do you mean? You'll understand soon enough, he replied cryptically. But first, I'd like to offer you something. An invitation, if you will. An invitation? Her mind spun. What was this man playing at? An invitation to what? To dinner, he said, his voice still calm, still measured. I think it's time we had a proper conversation. I believe you and I have much to discuss. Samantha didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to hang up, to tell him that she wasn't interested, that she was just a waitress and had no place in his world. But something else, something deeper, made her pause. The curiosity that had been eating away at her since last night surged to the forefront of her mind. Dinner, she echoed, still unsure. Why me? Adrian chuckled softly. Because you're special, Samantha. You just don't know it yet. The word sent a shiver down her spine. There was something in his tone, something both reassuring and chilling, that made her believe every word he said. She didn't know why, but she felt that her life, her ordinary life, was about to be turned upside down. She glanced at the clock. It was almost noon. She had a few hours before her shift started at the diner. Maybe she could just meet him, hear him out, and then forget about all this. She could walk away and return to her life. Okay, she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. I'll meet you for dinner. Excellent, Adrian said. His voice warm with approval. I'll send a car for you. Wear something nice. Before she could respond, he hung up. The line went dead, and Samantha sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in her hand. What had she just agreed to? By the time evening rolled around, Samantha had almost convinced herself that she had made a huge mistake. The hours passed slowly as she sat at her small apartment, contemplating the decision to meet Adrian Hale. She didn't know what to expect, but she did know one thing: she couldn't back out now. She had already made the commitment. When the doorbell rang at exactly 6:30 p.m., she jumped. Her heart raced as she opened the door, half expecting to find someone with a strange look in their eye, or perhaps even the man himself, standing there with a dark smirk on his face. Instead, she was met by a well-dressed chauffeur holding a black umbrella. "Miss Samantha?" he asked, his voice low and respectful. "Mr. Hale is expecting you." Samantha hesitated for a moment before nodding. The driver led her to a sleek black sedan parked at the curb. She slid into the back seat, trying to calm the nervous flutter in her stomach. The car was luxurious, leather seats, polished wood panels, and a faint scent of cologne lingering in the air. The drive was long, taking her away from the familiar streets she knew so well, toward an area she had never visited before. It was dark now, and the city lights blurred past the windows like a string of faint stars. Her mind raced with questions, but no answers came. Finally, the car pulled up to a high-rise building. It was imposing, the kind of place that spoke of wealth and power. Samantha felt a knot form in her stomach as the driver opened the door for her. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, her heels clicking against the pavement. The driver led her inside, through a security checkpoint, and into an elevator that ascended rapidly. As the doors opened, she was met by an opulent lobby, a stark contrast to the diner where she spent her days. Marble floors, glass sculptures, and expensive paintings adorned the walls. It was a world she had never even dreamed of entering. At the top floor, the elevator doors opened to reveal a large, penthouse suite. Adrian Hale stood there, waiting for her. "Welcome, Samantha," he said, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. He looked just as he had the night before, sharp, handsome, and eerily calm. "Thank you for coming," he continued, his voice warm but with an undercurrent of something more. "Please, make yourself comfortable." Samantha's nerves were on edge, but she managed a polite smile as she stepped into the lavish space. The penthouse was modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city below. A grand piano stood near the window, and an open bar gleamed in the corner. Everything about the place screamed luxury, from the art on the walls to the smooth, polished wood floors. As she looked around, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a dinner invitation. Adrian Hale wasn't inviting her here for casual conversation. There was something more at play, something bigger than she could imagine. "Please, have a seat," Adrian said, gesturing to the dining table. It was set for two, with candles flickering in the soft glow of the room. Samantha sat down, still unsure of what was happening. As she did, Adrian moved to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of red wine. The sound of the liquid filling the glasses was the only noise in the room. "I trust you're not one for small talk," he said as he poured. "So let me be clear, Samantha. I'm offering you an opportunity. A chance to leave behind everything you know, everything you've ever known." Samantha's heart skipped. What kind of opportunity? The kind that changes everything. For you. For your future. For your family. She froze. "My family? Ah, yes. You didn't think I hadn't done my research, did you?" His voice was a little darker now. "I know about your mother. I know about the debts. I know about your life." Her breath caught in her throat. How did he know so much? Adrian smiled. "Don't worry. This is just the beginning, Samantha. You can leave all that behind. The choice is yours." The suspense thickened in the air, and Samantha's heart pounded in her chest. What had she gotten herself into? What is Adrian offering her? And how does he know so much about her? The answers are just beyond reach, and she must decide whether to accept or walk away. Samantha sat in silence, the glass of red wine trembling in her hand. Adrian Hale's words hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating the room. He knew about her family, about the debts her mother had left behind. Her pulse quickened, and the wine glass felt heavier with each passing second. "You know about my mother?" she asked, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to remain calm. How could you possibly know that?" Adrian didn't immediately answer. Instead, he took a seat across from her, his eyes never leaving hers. He studied her, like a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. It was disorienting. The way he looked at her made her feel both exposed and powerful, as if he could read her every thought. "I know a great deal, Samantha," he finally said, his voice calm, almost soothing. "About your past, about your present, and about the path you're about to take." Her stomach churned. "The path I'm about to take," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Adrian said, leaning forward slightly. "I've been watching you for quite some time now. I've been following your progress, your choices. You have something inside you, something special. And I want to help you unlock it. The words hit her like a blow to the chest. He had been watching her, studying her, tracking her life. The idea that a stranger, no less a man like Adrian Hale, had been keeping tabs on her was both terrifying and fascinating. She wanted to ask him how he had learned about her mother, how he knew about the debts, but part of her was afraid of the answers. Part of her didn't want to know just how deep his reach went. "What exactly are you offering me?" she asked, her voice steadier now, but the underlying fear was still there, like a thin thread weaving through her words. Adrian smiled, a slow, confident smile that only made her feel more unsettled. "I'm offering you power. Influence. A way out of the life you've been trapped in for so long." Samantha blinked. "A way out? What do you mean?" "You're not meant for this," he said, his eyes softening as he spoke. "You don't belong in that diner, serving coffee to people who will never understand your potential. You're meant for more than that, Samantha. And I can give you the opportunity to step into a new world. A world where you're no longer invisible, no longer just a waitress scraping by. A world where you can truly make a difference." His words were seductive, like honey dripping off a spoon, sweet and enticing. They made her feel as though she were standing at the edge of something vast and beautiful, something that promised to elevate her beyond the life she had known. She had always dreamed of something more, something greater than the small, confined world she had lived in. But the way Adrian spoke, so sure, so commanding, made her wonder if there was a price to this new life he was offering. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, though she already knew the answer. There had to be a catch. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together. "The catch, Samantha, is that everything comes at a cost. Power doesn't come without sacrifices. But I'm offering you a chance to control your destiny, to take charge of your own future. All I ask in return is your trust. I need someone like you on my side. Someone who can think outside the box. Someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to succeed." Samantha's mind spun. She could see it, the life he was offering. A life of influence, of respect, of luxury. No more late-night shifts at the diner, no more worrying about bills. She could leave it all behind, step into a world where she was valued, where she was important. But the price? She took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in her head. She had always wanted more. She had always dreamed of a life where she didn't have to fight just to survive. But was this it? Was this her chance? "Why me?" she asked, trying to find some grounding. "Why not someone else? I'm just a waitress. There are plenty of people more qualified than me." Adrian chuckled softly, his eyes glinting with amusement. "You're more than just a waitress, Samantha. I see the fire in you. The drive. You've always had it, even if you don't recognize it yet. You're not like the others. You're different." Samantha shifted in her seat, her fingers nervously tapping against the edge of her wine glass. "And if I refuse?" she asked, even though part of her already knew the answer. "Then you continue living your life," Adrian replied smoothly. "But you'll always wonder what could have been. You'll always wonder what you could have achieved if you had trusted me, if you had taken the opportunity." His words hung in the air like a challenge, daring her to turn him down. And part of her wanted to refuse, wanted to walk out of this penthouse and go back to her simple life, the life she knew, familiar, safe, even if it was unremarkable. But then she thought about her mother, about the debts she had left behind, about the constant struggle to make ends meet. She thought about the weight of it all and how it seemed to suffocate her every day. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "I'll trust you. But I need to know exactly what I'm getting into. What do you want from me?" Adrian's smile widened, a look of approval flashing in his eyes. "That's the spirit. You'll understand soon enough, Samantha. All I ask is that you remain open-minded. Things won't always be easy, but I promise you this, you'll never regret it. Samantha wasn't so sure, but she nodded, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She had made her choice. There was no turning back now. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Adrian's influence was far-reaching, and he wasted no time pulling Samantha into his world. It was a world of power, of privilege, of high-stakes deals and luxury beyond her wildest dreams. She was introduced to high-profile people, to influential business leaders, and to those who controlled the city from the shadows. At first, it was intoxicating. She felt important, seen, like she was finally playing in the big leagues. Adrian took her under his wing, mentoring her, teaching her how to navigate this new world. He showed her how to network, how to make connections that would propel her to the top. She learned quickly, her natural intelligence and drive serving her well in this new life. But as time went on, she began to feel a strange unease. There were things happening that she didn't fully understand, decisions being made behind closed doors, whispered conversations that left her feeling like an outsider in her own life. Adrian was always present, always watching, always guiding her, but there were moments when she saw something in his eyes that unsettled her. It was as though he was playing a game, one with rules she didn't yet know. And then there was the matter of the debts. Though Samantha had agreed to Adrian's offer, the weight of her mother's financial troubles still hung over her. Adrian had promised to help, to provide a way out, but she hadn't seen any tangible changes yet. Her mother's creditors still called, still demanded payment, and Samantha could feel the pressure building once again. She wasn't sure what Adrian had in mind, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her new life was coming at a cost far higher than she had anticipated. One evening, as she stood on the balcony of the penthouse, gazing out over the city, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right choice. She had gained so much, wealth, influence, respect, but was it worth it? Was it worth the price she had paid to get here? The city lights sparkled below her, like tiny stars twinkling in the dark. But all she could see was the shadow of Adrian Hale, looming larger with each passing day, pulling her deeper into his world. As Samantha stands on the edge of her new life, she faces a growing realization: the cost of power is more than she ever imagined. Is it too late to walk away, or has she already crossed a point of no return? Samantha's new life felt like a constant, unrelenting storm. Every day she woke up, unsure of what was real anymore, what she had wanted, what she had expected, and what she had become. The life Adrian had promised her was nothing like she imagined. It wasn't glamorous or luxurious in the way she had thought. There was a coldness to it, an undercurrent of tension that was hard to shake. At first, the power was intoxicating. Adrian had brought her into his world, a world of influence, wealth, and prestige. She had attended high-end events, rubbed elbows with businessmen, politicians, and celebrities, and been introduced to people who could make or break entire industries. She had learned to navigate this world, how to smile at the right time, how to speak with authority, how to hold a room's attention with just a few words. But as the weeks passed, the cracks began to show. She realized that power didn't come free. It was a currency that demanded its own price. Adrian was everywhere, watching, guiding, leading her down paths that felt increasingly uncertain. She had made the mistake of thinking that she was in control, that she could manage this new life without being fully consumed by it. But that was naive. It was as if Adrian had placed her in the middle of a game she didn't fully understand, and each move she made brought her closer to a point where she couldn't turn back. That evening, Samantha sat in the penthouse, her eyes fixed on the city lights below. The room was silent except for the occasional hum of the air conditioning. She had become accustomed to the luxury, the sleek furniture, the grand piano in the corner, the massive windows that looked out over the city, but tonight, the grandeur felt hollow. She was restless, her mind constantly at war with itself. Her phone buzzed on the table next to her, snapping her out of her thoughts. She picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was a message from Adrian. Meet me in the office tonight. Urgent. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him all day. He'd been busy with meetings, handling affairs that she had learned to stay out of. His demand felt like an order, one she couldn't ignore. Not after everything he had done for her. She quickly stood up, brushing her hair back as she grabbed her coat and rushed out the door. The drive to the office was short, but the silence in the car felt heavy, like a precursor to something she wasn't prepared for. When she arrived, the office building was eerily quiet. It was late, most employees had already gone home, leaving the place nearly deserted. Samantha stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. Her mind raced as the elevator ascended, her thoughts consumed by Adrian. What did he want now? The doors opened with a soft chime, and she stepped out into the sleek, modern office space. Adrian was standing near the large window, his back to her. The city lights gleamed below them, the skyline stretching endlessly into the night. Adrian? Samantha called out, her voice uncertain. He turned slowly, and for the first time since they had met, she saw something in his eyes that wasn't just calm confidence. There was something darker, more intense. Something dangerous. Samantha, he said, his voice low and controlled. Come in. We need to talk. She walked into the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to steady her breath, but it felt impossible. About what? Adrian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. About everything. He gestured to a chair in front of his desk, and she sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had learned to expect the unexpected with Adrian, but there was something in the way he was acting tonight that made her feel uneasy. There was a weight to his presence, like he was about to drop something heavy onto her. I've been watching you, Samantha, he said, his voice still calm but carrying an edge. You've been doing well. But you've also been getting too comfortable. Samantha frowned. What do you mean by that? You've forgotten why you're here, Adrian continued, his gaze hardening. You're not just here to enjoy the perks, Samantha. You're here to work. You're here to help me. I am, she said quickly. I've been doing everything you've asked. You've been distracted, he interrupted, his tone growing sharper. I need your full attention. The people I'm dealing with are dangerous, and they don't tolerate mistakes. You need to be sharp, Samantha. Focused. And right now, you're not. You're getting distracted by things that don't matter. Her throat tightened as she realized what he was implying. What are you saying? What have I done wrong? Adrian walked over to the bar, pouring himself a drink. He didn't look at her as he spoke. I think you've forgotten where your loyalty lies. You're starting to question things. You've been asking too many questions. You think you can play this game without understanding the stakes, but you can't. Samantha's stomach twisted. She hadn't realized how much she had been questioning her choices until now. But hearing it from Adrian, hearing him say it so plainly, made her feel exposed. I'm not questioning you, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I need to understand more. I need to know what I'm getting into. Adrian turned and looked at her, his eyes hard and unyielding. You'll understand soon enough, he said quietly. But if you keep questioning everything, if you keep doubting me, then I'll have no choice but to reconsider your place here. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Her place? Was she truly in control here? Had she ever been? I'm giving you an opportunity, Samantha, Adrian continued, his voice growing colder. But if you can't see it, if you can't commit fully, then you'll have no future in this world. You'll go back to where you came from, nothing more than a waitress, living an ordinary life. The threat was subtle, but it was there. Samantha's blood ran cold. Adrian wasn't just offering her power. He was offering her something much darker, a life with no way out. If she rejected him now, if she walked away, she would be left with nothing. "I understand," she whispered, feeling the weight of his words sinking in. She had already crossed a line. There was no turning back now. Adrian's smile returned, but it was a smile that sent shivers down her spine. "Good. Now that we understand each other, it's time to move forward. We have a new project, one that will cement your place in this world. You'll be working directly with me from now on. No more distractions." Samantha nodded, though a part of her wanted to run. She didn't know if she could handle the darkness that seemed to be closing in around her. But what other choice did she have? She had already given up everything for this life. She had already given Adrian too much of herself to walk away now. As the meeting came to a close, Adrian handed her a file. "This is your new assignment. Study it carefully. I expect results." She took the file from him, her hands shaking slightly as she held it. There was no turning back now. This was her life. This was the path she had chosen, whether she wanted it or not. The next few days were a blur. Samantha threw herself into her new assignment, burying herself in work to avoid thinking too much about Adrian's cryptic words. But even as she focused on the tasks at hand, the weight of her decisions lingered in the back of her mind. She had given herself to this world, and now she was trapped in it. The project was demanding, high stakes, high pressure. Adrian had given her a role that required her to deal with some of the most influential, and dangerous, people in the city. She had to play the part, make the right connections, and prove herself worthy of Adrian's trust. But with each passing day, she felt herself losing more of who she was. There were moments when she questioned if this was really what she wanted, but every time she thought about leaving, the thought of going back to her old life, back to the diner, back to struggling to make ends meet, filled her with a deep, gnawing fear. She couldn't go back. Not now. One night, as she sat in her apartment, staring at the file Adrian had given her, she realized something. She had already sold her soul. And now, the price of power was more than she could ever pay. As Samantha continues to climb higher in Adrian's world, the cost of power becomes more apparent. But is she too far gone to escape, or is it already too late to turn back? Samantha's life had become a maze. Every day she woke up, each step felt as though she were walking further into Adrian's world, deeper into a place she never thought she would enter, never thought she'd belong. It was no longer just a matter of power and influence, it was a matter of survival. Adrian's words echoed in her head, relentlessly, "If you can't see it, if you can't commit fully, then you'll have no future in this world." She had committed. There was no turning back now. But as the days wore on, Samantha began to realize something: the deeper she sank into Adrian's world, the more she lost herself. She had once been so full of ambition and hope, so eager to leave behind the small life she had lived as a waitress. But now, she felt like a puppet, strings pulled by a man who controlled everything, even her very thoughts. It wasn't just about the deals, the glamour, or the money anymore. There was something darker at play, something that seemed to tighten its grip around her every time she stepped into Adrian's office, every time she attended one of his meetings. It was more than power. It was control. And she wasn't sure how much longer she could pretend that she was okay with it. It had been 3 weeks since that night in Adrian's office. Samantha had thrown herself into her new assignment, something high-profile, something that demanded her attention every minute of the day. The project was risky, involving major business mergers, highly influential investors, and powerful enemies. The stakes were enormous, and Adrian trusted her to handle it. But what Adrian hadn't told her was how much of herself she would have to give in order to play the game. She had already crossed a line. It had started small, a few small compromises here and there, things she could justify. She had never been a person to shy away from hard work. But now, the choices were getting harder. She had to stay late to make sure the deal went through. She had to lie to clients, betray the trust of people who depended on her. She had to make decisions that affected people's lives, and it was wearing on her. One evening, after another long day of meetings, Samantha found herself sitting alone at a high-end bar. The dim lighting and soft jazz music did nothing to calm the rising tension in her chest. She ordered a drink, trying to shake the unease gnawing at her insides. Adrian had been more demanding than ever lately, and the weight of his expectations was starting to suffocate her. She hadn't seen him much in the last few days, but she could feel his presence lurking behind every decision she made, every move she took. The bartender placed the glass in front of her, and she took a sip, the cool liquid sliding down her throat. The taste was familiar, but it did nothing to dull the fear that had been growing inside her. She had made so many compromises. She had betrayed so many people. And yet, she still couldn't shake the feeling that Adrian was leading her down a path she wasn't ready to travel. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, expecting a message from work or another update from Adrian. But it wasn't Adrian. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Meet me. I have information that could change everything." Her heart skipped a beat. Who was this? The message felt cryptic, urgent. Was it a warning? A threat? Or someone else trying to pull her out of Adrian's grip? She didn't have time to wonder. She picked up her purse and headed out of the bar, her mind racing with possibilities. The message didn't specify a place or time, but Samantha knew exactly where to go. It was the place where Adrian had first found her, where everything had begun, the diner. The thought of going back there, to that small, worn-out space, felt strange. It was a place she had tried to leave behind, a place that represented everything she had been running from. But the message, whoever had sent it, was too intriguing to ignore. The diner was quieter than she remembered. It was almost closing time, and only a handful of customers lingered in the booths, sipping coffee or finishing their meals. The sound of the coffee machine was the only noise that filled the room. She stepped inside, her footsteps echoing against the cold tile floor. She scanned the room but didn't see anyone who looked familiar. A part of her expected to see Adrian there, but she knew that wasn't the case. He wouldn't meet her here. This wasn't his style. Samantha approached the counter, where a familiar face greeted her. "Sam." "It's been a while," said Claire, the waitress who had worked alongside her when she first started. Claire was a bit older, a mother of two, and had always been one of the few people who treated Samantha with kindness when she had first walked into the diner. Her smile was warm, though there was something in her eyes that made Samantha uneasy. "Hey, Claire," Samantha said, trying to keep the nervousness out of her voice. Is there someone here for me?" Claire raised an eyebrow but didn't ask any questions. She simply pointed to a booth in the back corner, where a man sat waiting. Samantha's breath caught in her throat when she saw him. It was David, one of Adrian's former associates, a man she had once trusted, but whom she hadn't seen in months. David had always been a quiet presence in Adrian's circle. He was sharp, calculating, but never quite as charismatic as Adrian. There had been rumors about him, rumors that suggested he was no longer part of Adrian's inner circle. But Samantha didn't know the full story. She had never asked. She took a deep breath and walked over to the booth. David looked up as she approached, his expression unreadable. "Samantha," he said, his voice low. "I knew you'd come." She sat down across from him, her pulse pounding in her ears. "Why did you want to meet? What's this about?" David didn't speak right away. Instead, he slid an envelope across the table toward her. "Open it," he said. "You need to see this." Samantha hesitated for a moment, then picked up the envelope. She opened it slowly, careful not to rip it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a simple message written in bold, red ink. "He's not what you think he is. Watch him carefully. The truth is buried, but it will come to light soon enough." Her breath caught in her throat. The word sent a chill down her spine. What did it mean? Who had written this? And why was David giving it to her? David leaned forward, his eyes intense. Adrian Hale isn't just some businessman, Samantha. He's deeper into things than you realize. He's involved in something dangerous, something bigger than you or me. And you're caught in the middle of it. Samantha shook her head, her mind spinning. No. I've seen how he works. He's not like that. He's just. Just what? A businessman with a few dirty deals under his belt? David interrupted. I've seen the truth, Sam. I've seen what he's done to people who crossed him. You need to get out before it's too late. Samantha felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. What do you mean, get out? How do I get out? He's already involved in everything I do. I can't just walk away. You don't know what he's done for me. David's eyes softened. He's using you. You're just another pawn in his game. And you don't even realize it. He's controlling everything, your choices, your actions, your future. And soon, he'll control your very soul. Samantha recoiled at his words, but a part of her knew that David was right. The reality of it hit her like a freight train. Everything she had done, everything she had sacrificed, had been for Adrian, yet she had never fully understood the cost. She had blindly trusted him, believed in his promises, but now she saw the truth. She wasn't in control. He was. Her head swirled with 1,000 conflicting emotions. Fear. Betrayal. Regret. She had gotten in too deep, and now there was no way out. David stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Think about it, Samantha. Before it's too late. With that, he turned and left, disappearing into the night without a word. Samantha sat there for a long time, staring at the envelope in her hands. The words burned. In her mind, the warning echoing louder with every passing second. She had been caught in Adrian's web, and now she had to decide, could she break free? Or would she stay trapped forever in a life she no longer recognized? Samantha's world is crumbling around her. As she grapples with the truth about Adrian, she must decide whether to trust David's warning and leave everything behind. But is the truth really what it seems? Or is it another trap? Samantha stared down at the envelope in her hands, the words within it burning into her mind like a scar. He's not what you think he is. Watch him carefully. The truth is buried, but it will come to light soon enough. Her fingers trembled as she placed the envelope back on the table. The night had grown colder, but it was nothing compared to the chill running through her veins. The unease that had been gnawing at her for weeks had now escalated into something far more dangerous, far more real. She wasn't just questioning Adrian anymore, she was questioning everything. Adrian Hale had become a shadow over her life. He had given her power, influence, and a life she had once only dreamed of. But now, she realized, he had also taken something precious from her. Her freedom. Her autonomy. Her soul. The city lights flickered outside the diner's windows, casting long shadows across the floor. She was still sitting at the booth, alone. The place was eerily quiet now, the last few customers having left. Claire had already gone home for the night, leaving Samantha with nothing but the sound of her own thoughts and the weight of the decision before her. She had come to this diner to meet someone who knew something about Adrian. Someone who could give her the truth. But now she was stuck. How much of what David had said was true? Was Adrian really the man he seemed? Or had she been manipulated into becoming a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand? Her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence. It was a message from Adrian. Just his name on the screen sent a jolt of panic through her chest. I need to see you. Meet me at the office, now. The message was direct, commanding. There was no questioning it. She had no choice but to obey. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to refuse, to stay away, to run. But she couldn't. Not now. Not after everything she had already sacrificed. She had given up her old life, her friendships, her sense of self. She couldn't back down now. Not without answers. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the tile. The weight of the decision was unbearable. But she had already made it. She had no choice but to move forward, to confront Adrian and find out the truth. The office building was eerily quiet when she arrived. The usual hum of activity, the busy conversations of employees, and the constant noise of phones ringing were absent. It felt like the building itself was holding its breath. The lights in the lobby were dimmed, and the only sound was the soft clicking of her heels against the marble floors as she walked toward the elevator. As the elevator doors closed, her reflection in the mirrored walls stared back at her. She looked different now, more polished, more confident, but underneath that exterior, she felt hollow. There was a sharp edge to her thoughts, a feeling that she was standing at the precipice of something she couldn't control. The elevator reached the top floor, and the doors opened to reveal the office lobby. It was just as silent as the rest of the building, but the tension in the air was palpable. Adrian's office door was slightly ajar. She could see the faint glow of the desk lamp inside. She stepped forward, her breath shallow, her heart beating faster with every step. As she pushed open the door, Adrian looked up from behind his desk, his expression unreadable. "Samantha," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'm glad you could make it." His words should have been comforting, but they only made her feel more uneasy. Adrian had always been a man of few words, but there was something in the way he spoke now, something that sent a chill down her spine. "What is it, Adrian?" she asked, her voice betraying the fear that gripped her chest. "What do you want from me?" Adrian stood up slowly, his tall figure looming over the desk. He walked toward her, his steps measured and deliberate. As he reached her, he paused, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. "I've been watching you," he said, his voice calm but carrying an intensity that made Samantha's skin prickle. "I've been watching your every move. You've been questioning me, haven't you? You've been wondering who I really am." Samantha swallowed hard, the words sticking in her throat. How much did he know? How much had she revealed to him? She couldn't let him see her fear, not now, not after everything she had endured to get here. But it was getting harder to pretend. "Why didn't you tell me the truth, Adrian?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me what I was getting into?" Adrian's lips curled into a slight smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The truth? Samantha, you couldn't handle the truth. Not then. Not now." Her chest tightened at his words. She had given everything for this, her time, her trust, her loyalty, and now he was telling her that she wasn't capable of understanding the truth. "Then tell me now," she said, her voice more forceful than she felt. "Tell me everything. I deserve to know." Adrian took a step closer, his expression serious. "You want the truth, Samantha? The truth is that you've been playing a game you don't understand. You're caught in something much bigger than yourself, much bigger than us. And there's no way out." The words hit her like a slap to the face. She stepped back, her mind spinning. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" Adrian's eyes softened, but there was no warmth in them. "You think you can walk away, that you can leave this life behind, but you can't. Not anymore. You've crossed a line, and there's no turning back. You're too deep, Samantha. You're in this for good. Whether you like it or not." Samantha's pulse raced as she tried to process his words. She had known it wouldn't be easy. She had known there would be consequences, but this? This was beyond anything she had imagined. "I'm not your pawn, Adrian," she said, her voice shaking but determined. I'm not your property. I won't let you control me. Adrian's gaze darkened, and for the first time, Samantha saw something cold, something dangerous flicker in his eyes. He stepped closer, so close that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. You don't understand, Samantha, he said softly, his voice a deadly whisper. You've already made your choice. You've already given yourself to me. You're mine now. There's no escaping that. The word sent a cold shiver down her spine. She had crossed a line, and now there was no going back. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She was trapped. She took a step back, her head spinning. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. Adrian reached out, his hand grazing her arm as she tried to move away. His touch was cold, controlling. You've been so blind, Samantha, he murmured, his voice barely audible. But that's the price of loyalty. The price of power. For the first time in her life, Samantha felt like she was suffocating. The walls of the office seemed to close in around her, the air thick with the weight of Adrian's words. She had wanted power. She had wanted influence. But now, she realized, she had gotten more than she bargained for. Adrian stepped back, his hand falling to his side. You'll learn, Samantha. You'll understand soon enough. Just remember one thing, loyalty is everything. Without it, you're nothing. Samantha stood there, frozen. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. All she knew was that she had been swept into something dark and dangerous, and now there was no escape. As the darkness of Adrian's world closes in, Samantha must decide whether to continue following him or break free. But is there any way to escape the web she has woven for herself? The truth may be far more terrifying than she ever imagined. Will she be able to live with the choices she's made?